Every person you meet is hiding something from you. The tough guy hides his fear of how deeply hurt he is behind a big ego.
Am I the only one out here with 12 girlfriends who none of them can do shit but spend my money and suck my dick? Is that it? Have babies? Duh, who can't have a baby?
The people pleaser hides her fear of being rejected. And behind every yes is the need for that approval that she never got.
You slept with 1,000 men, not 999, in 12 hours.
Yeah, well, 1,057. I hit the 1,000, and there's still 57 men queuing. Of course, I was like, welcome in.
Behind each judgment is a defense mechanism that the judgmental person uses, thinking to themselves, if I judge that thing in someone else first, maybe people won't see it in me.
But what we want to do is to replenish the Social Security Trust Fund.
That's because people don't show us their truth. They show us their defense mechanisms. And that mechanism always overcompensates for their greatest fear. That's a quote from an ex-CIA agent, Chase Hughes, which I love. And it's true because the world is mean. It's unforgiving. It's bleak. It's gray. And especially in a patriarchy where girls are taught to hate themselves and boys are taught to hate girls, we're all hiding something. And we're living in a system that's hiding something from us. It's hiding its fear of women who understand their power and aren't afraid to use it. And if you look just beneath the surface, you'll see the exact opposite of what people are trying so hard to show you. And this is where most people get tripped up because we take everything at face value. That's how we end up being stuck in the same familiar hell day after day. We keep butting heads with the same coworker. We keep getting into the same arguments with our partner. But listen, after this episode, you are never going to make that mistake again. You're going to be able to look beneath the surface and actually find what it is that every person is hiding from you. And if you look closely enough, you might even see yourself. Hello baddies, greetings and salutations. Welcome to the first episode of 2026. I told y'all it's going to be amazing. So today we are talking about Girly Law of Power number 30. Use people's big egos to your advantage. I can't believe we're at number 30. At this time last year, I think we were at number 9. Act like a queen to be treated like one. And now we're at 30. That's okay, like crazy. Before we get into it, I'll do a quick intro. My name is Neeki. I am the baddest bitch in the building, not to be confused with you, who is also the baddest bitch in the building. And listen, the patriarchy is like a boot on our necks. But the thing is, that boot was never made by a cobbler. It was made by a dumbass. And the boot actually has a hole in it. So if there's a boot on our necks and there's a hole in that boot, all we gotta do is figure out how to tickle that foot. And that boot will come off. And that is the whole premise of my podcast, because I believe that the patriarchy is a system made by a bunch of dumbasses, and it's not that far-sighted. So we can find its loopholes, we can find the ways that it's conditioned us to leak our power, and we can unlearn those things and exploit those loopholes and build the best, most fulfilling life possible for ourselves, despite living in a system that was meant for us to fail. Because we're not playing fair in an unfair world. We are not playing fair in an unfair world, okay? Unless you want to be a guaranteed loser. So, with that, let's get into this episode. Now, I have structured this episode in the same way that I've structured the chapters in my book. So it's pretty similar to how my other Girly Laws of Power have gone, but with a little bit of a difference. So we're going to start with unlearning the crap. That is in every chapter of my book, that is the first subheading. Unlearning the crap. Then we'll get into the example. Then we'll get into what this actually means for you in practice. And then we'll get to exceptions and we'll wrap up. Okay. So let's unlearn the crap. There are two things that we need to unlearn. The first one is how to understand people with big egos. The second thing is how to interact with them. So let's define a big ego. Someone who has a big ego is a person who has a very inflated sense of self-importance. They have a sense of arrogance and superiority over other people. They think they're better than others. You think you're better than me? Yeah. And they have this constant need for attention. For example, by interrupting other people or talking about themselves incessantly. There's actually a line in my book that perfectly describes this. And I'm not just saying that because I wrote it, but I mean, I did do a good job. All right, here it is. RIP to the chicks that's dying to be me. Sorry, I haven't said nonsense in a while. Okay, here's the actual quote. Confidence comes from knowing your strengths. Arrogance comes from hiding your weaknesses, and it's rooted in insecurity. And that's exactly what a person who has a big ego is. They're insecure. So we really need to unlearn that a person with a big ego is actually full of themselves, because they're not. In reality, they are empty. That part of themselves that has to have self-validation and confidence and self-love is completely empty. And that's where the patriarchal loophole lies. Because the patriarchy itself is hollow. It's an empty shell. And like I said, it's hiding something. It's hiding its fear of women's power simply by existing. Like, imagine you're so powerful that a bunch of losers had to make a system to subjugate you because just by existing you are so powerful. Like, hello, are you trying to stroke my ego or are you trying to subjugate me? Because you got pick a struggle. So that is where the loophole lies. No, it's not only that person with a big ego who's shallow and who has that empty shell where their confidence should be. It's the whole system. And that person is a reflection of the system because they've been conditioned so deeply, more deeply than we've been conditioned in some ways. They've been conditioned so deeply to think that they need validation from other people. And a person with a big ego is actually one of the biggest pick-me's you're ever going to meet. So a woman who sees past that facade is the one who calls the shots. You're the one who holds all the cards in your hand if you're able to understand that what people are showing you is a load of baloney. Like the Chase Hughes quote I mentioned earlier, people don't show us their truth, they show us their defense mechanisms. And that defense mechanism is always compensating for their biggest fear. If you listen to Girly Law of Power number 22, use elicitation to bypass gatekeepers and mansplainers, he's the guy who's done a lot of work on elicitation, and as an ex-military chief, he used that a lot. So that's where I got a lot of my research for that law. And he's making another appearance here because he has this concept called inversion patterns, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But essentially, what you see when a person with a big ego is interacting with you is an inversion, because just beneath the surface, just beneath that facade of someone who's super full of themselves is actually somebody who's deeply insecure. The self-importance that these people with a big ego have is literally propaganda. Okay? It's literally propaganda because that is their defense mechanism doing marketing for them. Let's say that. It's doing marketing so people see a version of that person that they wish they were. And it'll help you in this episode to keep at the front of your mind, keep a person in mind. A person who you're working with, a person who you have to interact with regularly who has a big ego. Now, think of that person and reflect on yourself. Because if you really thought that they are full of themselves and they are really self-assured and super confident, then you've fallen for their propaganda. And something I talk about all the time, you know this, is that appearances matter more than reality. Other people are using that principle too. And we really need to stop taking things at face value. That's a way that we've been conditioned, that we have to play fair in this unfair world. And because we've been so deeply taught and socialized to be honest and be moral and be good girls and to never lie, we tend to think that, okay, I'm carrying myself with honesty, so other people are going to carry themselves with honesty too. and we have this false sense of reciprocity. That is a load of crap, and that's meant to get us to keep playing fair and be honest and give people unnecessary access to us while they take advantage of us, while they lie to our faces and expect us and rely on us to take things at face value. But we're not going to fall for that crap anymore. We're not falling for that propaganda. You know better now that you've listened to this episode. Even if you only listened this far, now you know better. Because anyone who has to forcefully and repeatedly tell you what they are or what they aren't is self-soothing. It's like they're saying an affirmation, but in the most fuck-ass way. And I'll quote something else from my book. Most of the time, when someone is speaking to you, they're actually talking to themselves. So when they keep going on and on about how good they are at something or how much better they are at a certain task or a project than you are or than other people are, they're really just talking to themselves. They're trying to self-soothe and they're trying to tell themselves and basically gaslight themselves into thinking that they actually are better because they know deep down that they aren't. And I want to be sort of empathetic to people like this because I know that the world is mean and unforgiving. The world is a tough place and being a person is not easy. And from childhood, we all develop a sense of defensiveness to protect ourselves. But as we get older, that sense of defensiveness gets fed into our own opinion of ourselves, our own sense of who we are. And we all have this built-in defensiveness that we carry around with us every single day. And some people tend to have a stronger sense of defensiveness than others. And these are the people who tend to have a more fragile sense of self. And they tend to have a low opinion of themselves. They don't have a lot of self-love. They might even have a lot of self-loathing. They might just hate themselves. And those are usually the people with the big egos. Because again, not only are they trying to hide that part of themselves from you and from other people, but they're trying to prove to themselves that those parts of themselves that they don't like don't exist. Now, because these people are so defensive about their sense of self and about a certain skill or ability or whatever it is that they think they have, and they're really forceful about them having it, they tend to trigger our own defensiveness because we don't want to be forced to believe something. But that's exactly what a person with a big ego is doing. They're forcing that propaganda of self-importance onto you. They're trying to force you to believe that. And that triggers our defensiveness, especially because they're also usually unpleasant people to be around. And then that in turn triggers their defensiveness because then we push back and then they push back and then it's just constant butting heads and we get nowhere. And let's be real, usually when we're countering their forceful ego with our own forcefulness, we build up resentment on both sides. And then their ego tends to get bigger and more forceful. And then again, the cycle keeps continuing and we're fighting their mask with our mask. Because not only are they hiding something from you, but you're also hiding something from them. We are all hiding parts of ourselves that we don't want other people to see. We're showing the world our defense mechanisms. And it might help to think of it this way. Their ego is like a wall that they've built around themselves. Every time you get defensive and try to challenge their ego and challenge their perceived sense of self, you're actually pouring more cement and solidifying that wall. But what we need to do is we need to find where that wall is most hollow and build a door. Because if you have to work with coworker Anthony, then you owe it to yourself to be able to navigate his big ass ego in a way that serves you. People with big egos don't want reason. They want reflection. More specifically, they want a reflection of what they wish they were. And that's exactly what Cleopatra did with Julius Caesar. DJ, cue up the Egyptian music. There we go. It's me. I'm the DJ. So Cleopatra was queen of Egypt from 51 to 30 BCE. But it took a lot, and I mean a lot of strategizing to get there. So she became queen at age 18 when her dad, Ptolemy XII, died. That is the past tense of die. Now, he left 4 siblings as his heir. And as the custom was, the eldest son would become king. In this case, Ptolemy the 13th, who was 10 years old. And he got married to Cleopatra, his sister, who was 18 at the time. So incest was, it was, it was normal because, when you're power hungry, you'll be fucking siblings, cousins, whoever you need to fuck to get on the throne. And we're going to see these people were very power hungry. So what happens is in 47 BCE, Ptolemy exiles Cleopatra. But later that year, Julius Caesar, who is the dictator of Rome, arrives in Egypt to meet with Ptolemy the 13th. Julius Caesar had his eyes on Egypt. He wanted to make Egypt a Roman colony. And this man, he's a 52-year-old man at the time. He's a pretty smart and successful leader. He's very ambitious, but he is a dictator. He was also a hoe. He had a lot of mistresses. He loved spectacle. And he had an interest in Egyptian history. Now, when Cleopatra, who's 21 at the time, hears about Julius Caesar coming to Egypt, she sneakily makes her way back to Alexandria. And she had a goal, which was to get back on the throne, to get rid of her rivals, aka her siblings, like her brother husband, and to keep her hands clean. Because her sister before her had actually overthrown their father while he was king and killed her own husband and imprisoned some of her other sisters. And the Egyptian people didn't respond too well to that. They're like, why is the queen killing people in her family? So she wanted to keep her hands clean and get somebody else to do the dirty work for her. She had her eyes set on Julius Caesar because Rome was the main political power in that region in the Mediterranean at the time. So she goes to Alexandria, and legend has it, one night when Caesar is meeting with his generals in a palace, a Greek merchant comes knocking on their door. He says that he has a large, important gift to give to the Roman dictator. And Julius Caesar's like, okay, cool, send him in. And the merchant presents a rolled up carpet. And as he unrolls it, Cleopatra emerges. So already she's appealing to his love of spectacle. Now, we all know what happened that night. They had sexy time. And when Ptolemy found out, he got really angry. And he ordered his guards to seize the palace. So at that moment, Ptolemy had just made an enemy out of Caesar, out of one of the most, or arguably the most important political agent of the time. Now, Caesar was already head over heels smitten with Cleopatra, and his army ends up defeating Ptolemy's. And what happens is he captures Ptolemy and puts him under house arrest. The other sibling is their sister Arsinoe, who actually flees from the palace and makes herself the head of the Egyptian army and declares herself queen. Remember, all these siblings are fighting over the throne. It's like that scene in The Office where Michael, Pam, Andy, and Dwight, I think, were all holding like a gun to each other's head, like pretend guns. You know the scene I'm talking about. Anyway, Cleopatra tells Julius Caesar to release Ptolemy and broker a truce, knowing damn well that he was going to do the opposite because he's got a big ego and he's going to do what he's going to do because he's the Roman dictator. Who are you to tell me what to do? And that's exactly what he did. And then he also went and fought Arsinoe and won against the Egyptian troops. And in the battle, Ptolemy drowns in the Nile. So that's one of Cleopatra's rivals down. And Arsinoe is captured and sent to Rome as a prisoner. So that's another rival down. And one by one, Caesar disposed of Cleopatra's rivals, including not just her siblings, but also the people who opposed her or conspired against her. And she's getting all of this done without getting her hands dirty. Now, to stroke his ego and appeal to his love of spectacle and his interest in Egyptian history, she takes him on a 2-month luxury cruise down the Nile with hundreds of ships, and she basically dresses herself up as the goddess Isis and puts on this huge spectacle for him. And he ends up being one of the only Romans to see the pyramids, as the legend goes. Because Caesar was so smitten with Cleopatra and he was drunk on the influence that she had over him and over his ego, he ended up staying in Egypt way longer than he intended to. So even though he put Ptolemy under house arrest and imprisoned Arsinoe, In a way, he had his own self-imposed form of house arrest because he just kept staying in Egypt. And this was great for Cleopatra because what she did, remember her goals. Her goals were to get back on the throne, get rid of her rivals, and keep her hands clean. And she managed to do all three of those things. They don't just call her the greatest seductress of all time for nothing. Like, put some respect on her goddamn name. So she was able to rule Egypt as an independent state, not as a Roman colony. And it wasn't until after her death that Egypt did become a Roman province. So girl was working OT to make sure that power stayed in her hands and in her country. Now, after Caesar was assassinated in 44 BCE, Cleopatra did the exact same thing with his successor, Mark Antony. He was a guy who had an even bigger and more fragile ego than Julius Caesar, because Caesar still was a very composed type of person, but Mark Antony was like, that guy was a mess. So Cleopatra went from being in exile and fighting for the throne with 3 other siblings to ruling for almost 20 years by finding the right person and knowing exactly how to push their buttons. I'm going to paint a picture for you that we've all experienced as women. Picture it. You sitting in the doctor's office. You're there because you feel off and you want answers. Well, what happens? You're told that it's stress related and you should just try to reduce your stress, aka just deal with it. So now not only do you feel off, you also feel guilty for the things you can't control, like work deadlines. And at some point while you were sitting there, you probably thought to yourself, there's got to be a better way. Listen, it is 2026 and we are no longer taking just deal with it as an acceptable solution. Because let me tell you, there is a better way. And it's one that's focused on things that are actually within your control. Stress Less by Cement Health is a clinically formulated 3-in-1 gummy designed to regulate cortisol, support serotonin, and enhance focus. It helps your body respond to stress more effectively, not only by targeting your stress, but also by improving your mood and your focus. I've actually been using the Stress Less gummies for about a week, and I actually took one before recording this episode. Now, a little bit about Cement. The company was co-founded by Lar and Matt. Lar spent years dealing with extreme period pain and endometriosis. Her husband, Matt, is a biochemist who created the first Cement products to help treat the root cause of her issues. Their mission to support women struggling with hormonal and other health challenges still drives Cement today, because being told to deal with it is never an acceptable solution. So if the Stress Less gummies sound like something you've been looking for, you can try them for yourself by clicking the link in the show notes. And if you want a little discount, make sure to use the code Neeki20 for 20% off. Cement is currently available in the United States only. Now, back to the show. So what does this all mean for us? We are women, just like Cleopatra was. We have the same power that she had. Maybe not over an entire country, but we still have the same charm and seductive abilities. And when I talk about seductive abilities, I don't necessarily mean sexual. I have a whole chapter in my book about this. Patriarchy hack number 20, Master the Art of Non-Sexual Seduction. So what we have to do, just like Cleopatra, we have to identify our goal and work backwards. There's nothing that you do from my content, there's nothing that I tell you to do without first identifying a goal. Again, this is another thing we have to unlearn, because we tend to think that being goal-oriented makes us selfish or makes us wrong in a way, like we're some kind of narcissistic hedonists or we're going to end up using people or some garbage like that. When in reality, everything you do is driven by a goal. And if you don't have a goal, then you're just operating willy-nilly and wasting your time and everybody else's. Maybe your goal is just to be able to work with this person in a better way without wanting to pull your hair out every day. So start with that goal. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to disarm this person. And the way you're going to do that is by seeing past that facade. So I don't want you to look at coworker Anthony and think of himself as the 35-year-old man who's standing in front of you right now, who's super full of himself and thinks he is the guy who runs the place. Instead, I want you to find 5-year-old Anthony. I want you to find the little boy within that person who's craving something, who's desperately crying out for something. He's crying out for something because that persona that you're seeing is the inner child asking for something unresolved. That's the defense mechanism you're seeing. Their ego is just the armor around them. Remember that. And remember that a person with a big ego is looking for reflection, not reason. So once you identify what it is that that little kid wants, and it doesn't have to be deep, you don't have to psychoanalyze them, you just have to observe. You have to observe. For example, I had a manager who treated me like crap, who treated me so badly. And once I got over the initial anger of why is this woman treating me like this, I peeled away those layers, the outer layers of this persona she's showing me, of this unpleasant, fake friendly person. And I saw the inner child within her. I saw a little girl who was probably treated really badly by women because this woman was a raging misogynist. I saw a little girl who probably just hates herself, probably just didn't get the love that she needed from other people and from herself to be able to understand that she is worthy. Observe them and ask yourself this. If I met the 5-year-old version of this person, what would be the thing that they would want most? So get acquainted with their inner child, because their adult version is just the defense mechanism. Then what you're going to do is you're going to understand the inversion pattern that they have. Like I mentioned, Chase Hughes identifies a few different inversion patterns, and I think he captures it pretty well. So I'll list the ones that he mentions. The first one is the tough guy. This guy is afraid that you're going to see he's actually deeply hurt. And his aggression is a form of armor that he uses to protect himself against being humiliated or betrayed or abandoned. The next type is the people pleaser. This person has a fear of rejection. This person wants to be liked. And so they keep putting themselves out in hopes of getting that. The judgmental or the hypercritical type of person feels guilt and shame about something in themselves that they haven't forgiven. And each judgment that they pass is a defense mechanism because they think to themselves, if I judge this person first, then hopefully nobody else will see that in me. The overachiever is a workaholic who's scared that if she stops achieving things and stops performing, then she's not going to be good enough. And the class clown is the person who is just never real, never serious, because they're scared. They're scared of being seen as fragile, as emotional. And so their humor, the funny jokes that they crack, is a form of survival. Now, this is not an exhaustive list, and I don't need to give you more archetypes here because what you need to do is observe that person, because they might be a mix of these things. They might be one of these things just glaring. And usually the person with the big ego is a form of the tough guy. They might be the tough guy to the T, or they could be a tough guy mixed with some other elements of these archetypes, or mixed with something that's not even on this list to begin with. But that's where your ability to observe and your intuition as a woman, and as a woman who is smart and perceptive, comes in, so you can identify what is right beneath that surface. If I peel back that layer, who am I looking at? The whole point of these things is to understand the person. You want to understand them. You don't want to challenge them. Okay, it's tempting to challenge them. It's tempting to challenge them and push back and be defensive. But that's a self-absorbed thing to do, because now you're coming out of a place of your defense mechanisms. And these people have been challenged all their lives. And that's probably what hardens that shell. If they've built that wall around them, every time someone challenges them, they pour a little bit more cement, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And countering defensiveness with more defensiveness doesn't do you any favors. Understand, don't challenge. Keep that in mind. Understand, don't challenge. Relate to their pain. If you can, share a common enemy. Or make up a common enemy for all I care. Maybe you've noticed that they've complained about a certain person or about a certain software or something. They've complained about something multiple times. Capitalize on that. Use that as your shared enemy. If they have trouble with a certain manager, so do you. If they hate using a certain software, so do you. Empathize with them. And that's the thing, you have to come out of a place of empathy, at least to some extent. Because we're not doing this out of self-hatred. We're not doing this out of hatred for other people. We're not doing this to manipulate people and take advantage of them. We're doing this out of love for ourselves. I deserve to work with somebody who's not going to be butting heads with me all the time. I deserve to get promoted. I deserve to do whatever it is that you think you deserve. But a lot of the time, someone's standing in your way. And you can't just kick and punch and try to push them out of the way. That's the equivalent of getting defensive and just being like, oh, Anthony has a huge ego. I'm so tired of him. Next time he, says something to you in a brainstorming session or whatever, and he rubs you the wrong way and you just push back. That's literally the equivalent of kicking and punching. And I know, we want to exercise our love language of physical touch and punch these motherfuckers in the face. I've been there. I mean, I haven't punched anyone in the face, but I've wanted to do that. We all have. But that doesn't get us anywhere. Remember, we're dealing with an empty shell. The patriarchy is an empty shell. These people's persona of a giant ego is an empty shell. And you know something, just by listening to this, you know something that probably 90% of people don't know. So you're already equipped to deal with these people in a better way than most of the other people you're working with or you're interacting with on a daily basis. Let me tell you that. So again, understand, don't challenge. And the thing is, you might even see a part of yourself in them. And that could help you empathize with them more. Now, a few bonus things you can do to understand them better is to learn about them. Learn what their favorite type of music is. Learn what type of movies and TV shows and books they like. Understanding someone's tastes will tell you a lot about them. And another thing that might help you is repeating their words back to them. I talk about this in my Girly Law of Power number 11. Use the power of suggestion to always get your way. I have a lot, especially in my book, because I revamped that law. I have so many examples of little tricks of using the power of suggestion to get people to soften up and to get your way with them. And one of those things is repeating their words back to them, because that has a hypnotic effect. People love hearing their words repeated to them. It's a form of self-affirmation. I used to do this a lot when I was working, especially in corporate, because you know how it goes when they get fixated on a certain term and they call themselves, oh, we have so much value add, or we have blah, blah, blah. Like they take a term and they just run with it. Repeat that to them. Use their language. What did I say earlier when I was talking about Cleopatra? What did I say? I said a person with a big ego wants reflection, not reason. That means being a reflection of them, of what they wish they were. Let's wrap up by looking at some exceptions. To be clear, this does not mean nurturing people. This does not mean being their mom. This does not mean giving them emotional energy. This is you working backwards from a goal. This is you understanding how to interact with people so well that you always get what you want. And someone might be listening to this thinking, oh, well, isn't this manipulative? Isn't this bad? Blah, blah, blah. No, you are going to work with that person anyway, and you were going to do it in a way that was not conducive to your goals or to theirs. You were going to do it in a way that was probably going to make them more defensive, and you were going to butt heads. Because guess what? You're still going to have to work with coworker Anthony 5 days a week. You might as well do it in a way that's effective. And listen, we need to stop moralizing honesty and this linear route. You got to do A, then B, then C. You got to be yourself and you got to just do your best and that's it. No, that is the lazy way out. That is the honesty monger's way out, because people who fetishize honesty are the biggest liars, and they do that so they can take advantage of you. So no, we're not taking the linear A to B, B to C, C to D, and then D is a dead end. D for dead end. No. That's not what we're doing. I'm sorry. There's a organ in my body that can create a person. You better believe I'm going to be creative. And we're not here to change anyone. We're not here to baby anyone. I'm not here to freaking breastfeed Anthony. I'm here to get my bag and do it in a way that is going to be harmonious for everyone and do it in a way where I can meet my goals. So we're not playing fair. We're not playing fair. The world is not made for us to play fair to begin with. We're just told that so that everybody else can take advantage of us. All right, with that, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to rate this podcast 5 stars if you loved it. And if you don't love it, I don't even know how you got this far, but you learned something. Let's be real. You learned something for sure. And if you want to grab a copy of my book, I will leave the link in the show notes. You can get it on Amazon as a hardcover, paperback, or Kindle. And I also have a separate link if you want to get it as an EPUB file, or I now have it as a PDF. Don't forget that you are the baddest bitch in any building that you step foot in. All right, until next time, stay bad. Love you. Bye. Thank you to all the baddies who are supporting on Patreon. Shout out to Kate, Danny, Adriana, Mina, Gemma, Priya, Katya, Melissa, May, Naomi, Nilufar, Adelaide, Nadia, Faith, Amy, Simran, Melinda, Sophia M, Sophia K, Jada, Yael, Roselle, Amara, Kat, Delia, and May. Thank you all so much.